Hi everyone, welcome to Perf Roundtable. Today we've got with us Sam, Steve, and Kelly and myself. And today we want to explore a bit more into size differences in programming and how it might feel for an athlete and the things that a coach might be considering. So Kelly coaches Sam, so she knows his program very well, and Steve coaches me. So each of the coaches have an understanding and they think about recovery very differently between Sam and I. Um, I want to put it onto Steve and Kelly. How would you guys explain, um, the size differences in terms of how we would lead you to program for us? Steve, you can start.
Okay, so me working with you, obviously, I know your recoverability is quite fast. We can work at maximal loads quite frequently as well. We don't have to really work on the lower end, especially when we started out. I know of late it hasn't been as much, but that's because you've also become a high level lifter as well. You're lifting more, but I know leverage wise, you also pull sumo which is different to Sam as well, which is conventional. Just general recoverability in yourself, I know, is much quicker than Sam's. Just, we're talking about overall muscle mass size, everything really. It's quicker. So you can handle and tolerate a lot more volume, higher intensities, and just generally more, accessories as well. If we can't get something out of comp stimulus, just by comp lifting, I know that you can do a lot more accessories, lower and upper body, and be fine. And especially with the way that you are so technically proficient in your bench as well, you can handle a lot. Probably you're probably who I program the most bench press out of all my athletes, I believe. But that could change over time. But that's also based on your size as well.
Yeah.
I think if we lead Kelly now into Sam.
Yeah. Is there any, I just got a question for you with that. Is there any, when you're designing new macros or looking at the ordering of exercises for Danny, does interference, is it on a lower, what do you call it? You know how you've got like to worry and not to worry? I can't think of the word. Is interference less of something that you need to take into consideration when you're designing the micro? Or do you take
yes and no? Because I know that adaptations take place regardless.
Yep.
And sometimes we want someone of Danny's size and stature to have that kind of masked fatigue when he comes into a session as well.
Yeah.
We did revert away from that not too long ago. It was more like it was almost back to back on some of the sessions.
Yeah.
But then we came to, I wanted him to start to feel fresher on one of his days as well. So we moved a couple of things around.
Yep.
And just because I think we almost ran out of room where to go with what we were running for such a long time that now we've had to make a few changes to try and find this stimulus that's going to really, really kickstart things again.
Yep. So you kind of think you were relying on fatigue for the stimulus and now you can't as much anymore. So you're going to have to put things in different places to see if you can get the adaptations from not just being fatigued.
Yeah, and there's one thing to know with Danny is he's an extreme outlier with supercompensation as well.
Yeah, you've said that before.
Yeah, especially when we first started. I know he would squat. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, but it was something like 200 to 205 in training, and then come out on the platform and squat 10 to 15 kilos more.
Yeah,
which is especially
right.
for someone his size is something you would never expect, and something that you're going onto the platform and it's very unpredictable because it's something he's never loaded before as well.
Yeah,
and the size of the person also comes into play then, and like it was really kind of hard in a way to be able to understand why this was happening, but his would just generate enough fatigue and be able to be submaximal in the sense that when we washed out a little bit, he would supercompensate and just be a freak, really.
Yeah.
So I guess at times I'm sort of like a heavyweight in the sense where I hold on to a lot of fatigue and it's mastering training, but then when it comes time to taper, I'll be able to perform and have that super compensation effect, much like a heavyweight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is rare. It's not something that's extremely common, especially not in that lighter weight class. But we did have days to pull from, which would suggest that could happen. Because I think I remember, if we go all the way back when you went to that commercial gym and you squatted that huge set of 5.
Yep, 190 for 5, something like that.
190 for 5, and that would suggest that you could squat 210 to 215 really if you were to load it up. But then your main day and that week you weren't really getting 10 kilos more than that on your single at a higher RPE.
Yeah.
So I guess if you were to describe, because Danny, is a 66 and you do have a lot of smaller people, if you were just to describe their fatigue and how you think of their fatigue compared to large people, what are a couple of words that you would say?
Like I said, it's the fatigue should be minimal usually. To generate it, we need a lot.
Yeah.
And recoverability is quite high.
More worried about detraining than overtraining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I guess.
Do you want to explain Sam's?
Yeah. Well, it's literally the complete opposite, really.
Yeah.
So I guess with Sam, it's more of there's larger interference between deadlifts and squats. So we have to be very careful, and bench really, because of his leverages. It's not just size, he's very tall as well. So, for someone who is a 120 who isn't as tall, it would be a little bit different. But because he is so tall, we have to think about the distance traveled on the bar mostly as well. So it's making sure that the squats and the deadlifts are far enough away from each other that they don't interfere with each other as much, and making sure that he's going into each session fresh enough to be able to perform. That is the biggest difference. And also overall volume throughout the week. Finding the stronger that he's getting, the least amount that he needs. So it's more about knowing when to put in the volume and then when to strip the volume away to get that super compensation effect.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying.
So I guess
and then monitoring. What's that word?
Monitoring.
making sure fatigue's under control. Mostly has to be under control. And I think that is I think that's also got to do with distance traveled mostly. Because if you go into the squat session on Friday and still carrying fatigue from the week, it slows down really quickly because of his size, because of the height. Whereas if you've got your 120s who are quite small, like short, who'd be able to handle that a bit easier.
The biggest thing like that would show that, I guess, with my kind of program would be my pause squat. Like my pause squat has probably stayed around 200 for like a year now, but my primary squat has gotten stronger. I find like even within a block, like on that secondary squat day, it'll start, around 190, 195. By week 3 and 4, I'll find I should be able to put more on the bar, but at that point, I'm also deadlifting more as well, which also tanks that secondary day. So I find like just block to block, week to week, it ends up just staying the same, but it means that I'm coming in fresher for my primary squat day.
Yeah, I see. I think mine's sorry.
The trickiest thing is being able to get the taper right.
Yeah. I think a direct comparison between my program and Sam's is like on the secondary day, how you mentioned yours stays the same throughout the block. Mine almost progresses equally the same as much as my primary day. So there's less distinction between what's a secondary and a primary day. So if I'm stronger on a secondary day early in the week, I can also predict that by the time it gets to the end of week, I'm also going to be quite strong as well. Considering I stay within the program, like say, if I feel strong at RP7, it's still going to be like plus 5 kilos, right? But obviously if I overshoot it, then there's still fatigue involved. But generally it's still progressing upwards alongside that primary day.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that we look out for then between coaches is like we use size as a proxy for how well someone's going to recover, right? So that's just one of the factors. And so obviously for someone that is larger, they're going to be moving more weight, most likely over more distance. And so you need to be more careful in a sense with dosing, training out and spacing it out, make sure everything is dialed in. So I guess Sam needs to be, I guess, much more responsible in order to continue progressing versus myself. That's not to say like a smaller lifter can be irresponsible, but there's less margin of error for a lighter lifter, right? So Steve has more options to play with as well in terms of programming in that sense. Because I recover so quickly, he has ranges between like, 1 rep all the way to 8 reps because I'm more technically efficient and all those things associated with being a smaller lifter. Like, since we can handle more, he can dose more, knowing that I'll still recover from whatever he puts on the program.
Yeah. Whereas, even us taking away 1 set from block 2 to block 3 for 1 set and 1 rep has yielded huge results with a recovery. For Sam. So like it's only 1 set.
For sure.
But also on that like margin for error, like if I go to at 8 or 8.5 for a primary squat on like week 2 and 3, and my squat slows down, like it might look quick, but it will feel slower for me, then I'm done. Then week 4, like I've got nothing left. So I really have to time when I'm hitting that kind of 8.5 squat. And it has to be at the end of the block, because if I hit it too early, then I just can't recover from it, just from the distance traveled and the load that's on my back.
I think moving forward, we're going to be playing with low jumps to try and time it a little bit more for his squat. Like we've got the deadlift time down really well now, but it's definitely the next step to make it better for Sam's program is timing his low jumps and how much he can low jump per week, holding back at the start of the block and then really expressing at the end of the block. Because it's quite a linear progress, but we're still going to get results from this peak coming up, but it's going to run out because there's too much fatigue accumulated at the start of the block. Even talking about week zeros and stuff like that.
I see. I think even for like looking at when training's going well for myself, Steve, like when I'm hitting my heavy singles and things like that, I could start quite heavy and I'm only taking like 2.5 or 5 kilo jumps week to week. And it's even hard from that first week and I'm still building adaptations. Which is completely different to Sam's approach, where he needs to, like, it's almost necessary to have that huge runway so you can have like one solid crack at it by the end of the block. I think as 66 or like lighter lifters, it's like, just keep pushing and hope that the adaptations roll through as you're training hard.
There's some outliers though, like with Meg, she's only got 1 chance too. She needs that big runway as well, but that could be her strength at her size too. We've tried to work at high intensity for her, which would be thinking that that's what she would be able to respond to, but it didn't work.
Like at the same time, although size is a very good proxy, it's not like the main thing, right? Like we only use it as a guide or an indicator for us to begin with starting a program, but it's not the be all end all. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess in a sense, like smaller lifters obviously can handle a lot more intensity, well, pretty much everything, intensity, volume, frequency, all at the same time, and can sustain that for a longer period of time, versus heavier weight lifters will need to start more submaximal and slowly build up over time in order to have a maximal performance, right? And this is at the end of the day, in order to get that top end strength expression, right? Because I could run the same program that Sam runs and I could take it really, really submaximal the exact same way. Like, although I'm saying that I'm staying pretty maximal throughout the whole block, I still am like starting light and getting heavier over time, but it's not to the extent that Sam's going. It's like, 20 or 30% difference from where he starts and where he ends, right? And
Yeah,
so,
we're even going to start playing with starting even lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like this block, we started it on squat like 265, and I'm going to end around 310. But
Pretty
that
high.
265 might even, or we're thinking might even still be too heavy for that week one. And although that sounds really, really light as a percentage or just as a total load, we're thinking it's still even too heavy for the start of the block. And then I'm carrying fatigue into week 2, into week 3,
Yeah.
purely just from that first single being too heavy.
Yeah. It's all about the back
interesting.
downs too, right? If the back downs, get too heavy as well, like too heavy too quickly. If the back downs get too heavy in week 3 of 5, if we plan to run 5, it's between 1 and 5 now, then it's game over. So it's finding where to start those back downs.
Yeah.
As well.
Whereas we almost have Danny can run, we can run multiple higher intensity top sets at the start of the week to set him up for later on in the week.
Yeah.
Right. So like we have a single early in the week and then we have a single later in the week as well on just his squat. If we talk about his deadlift, we've started blocks at 95% or something like that.
Yeah.
Super high. And just been able to run it through that.
Yeah, so if you even look at the percentage of that start, Sam, like if you're going to go off that training max of 307.5, that's 86%.
Yeah, so that's still high as a percentage.
Yeah. I just wanted to picture like what would happen if I ran Sam's program and what would happen if Sam ran my program.
You'd get
like percentage wise.
I'd get a man flu.
Everything would feel really heavy really quickly, Danny.
Yeah, for sure.
Do we want to
by week 2 need to deload?
Yeah,
Sorry,
you
Kelly,
are
you go.
deloading. You're deloading every week. Whereas old mate's going to be in the red real quick. You touched on just recent before, Steve, that's something that both you and I have been doing, and I don't know if you guys, because I haven't seen your programs, have been running the single at the start of the week and a single or a double at the start of the week and then a single at the end of the week for smaller lifters. Do you want to talk about that, Steve, and why we would do that? Because I do that for a fair few of my really small people now.
Okay, so it's almost in a thought process where if they're small enough to recover fast enough, and if we think about something like bench press, where we are running multiple singles a week, where we have this like separate microcycle within a microcycle, we can almost do the same with a smaller lifter with their squat or their deadlift or both.
Yeah.
So if we can run, we're running a single at the start of the week and the end of the week, it's like we have these 2 kind of microcycles laid out in the week to be able to blend it in to see which day ends up performing better. This creates like a predictability sense in what we're going to run in their taper as well, which is what we've been talking about quite a lot lately in terms of like bench press and how, this day is turning up stronger. That's in the middle of the week. How am I going to transfer this to the weekend when they're competing or something? But all that is acknowledging what they're doing prior to that day, and then you can easily just write that moving into a competition. So it in a sense sets them up, but it's if the first day ends up becoming what we'll call like the primary day or the stronger feeling day, then all we know is that our taper strategy is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, so we don't need to worry about so much the one day feeling stronger than the other anymore. We need to work around what feels stronger and taper it from that.
Yeah.
I like that thinking.
It's just a lot. It's probably more predictable than just being like, okay, we want this day to be strong all the time. Whereas if we have multiple days to pick from, it removes that margin of error to be able to, especially if, say I lay Danny's primary squat day on a Friday, but he competes on a Saturday, I have to then adjust his whole taper week back a day to kind of like just make that kind of work on that day. Whereas if I can get Danny strong on a Monday and a Friday, and if he was doing a third squat day and he has that on like a Wednesday, we know there's just X amount of days that he needs to be able to recover from to be fine.
It's very interesting. I think that's a whole new roundtable topic
Yeah,
tapering.
that's a complete different tangent that we're about to go down. But I guess we could close it off there. I think we covered size very well, and I guess next time if we do run another on our next roundtable, we can go through tapering and predictability.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
different
Sounds good.
strategies.
Different
For sure.
strategies. It's not all about which day is the strongest anymore.
Yeah,
Strategious.
Yeah.
Strategist. All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.